Okay, we are live.
Great, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Common Council Finance and Claims Committee meeting for today, Thursday, May 11th, 2023, starting at 7:06 p.m. I'll begin with the roll call of Finance Committee members. We have present Council Member Nora Najelski-Eichner, Council Member Diana Revolus, Council Member John Kides, and myself, Council Member Greg Burnett. So we have a quorum for tonight's meeting. Moving on in the agenda, item 3, public participation. We did not receive any written emails from the public to share and include in the minutes. Do we have any member of the public that wishes to speak? If you can raise your hand electronically, we will transfer you over as a panelist so that you can speak.
There are no public attendees.
Okay, great. So at this time, I'll close public participation and we'll move on in the agenda to item 4, which is approval of the minutes of the April 13th, 2023 meeting. Do we have any additions, deletions, or changes to the minutes? I have a couple of minor corrections. Beginning on page 1, the spelling of Vanessa Valadares. It's Valadares. If that correction could be made throughout the entire document, that would be appreciated. Moving on to page 2 of the minutes, at the top of the page, we should remove in the first sentence, we should remove the word gave. It should just be he explained. And at the bottom of the page, the last paragraph, if we can correct the spelling of Alan Dutton, it's A-L-A-N. At the top of page 3, the first sentence, it indicates that we are in negotiations with Dry Dock. That's incorrect. Dry Dock is the owner of Dry Dock is involved, but the actual negotiations with Smoking Aces, which is the vendor at Oak Hills. And I believe, one other addition on page 5, the first paragraph, the name of the financial organization that we're working with is Bloom, B-L-U-M Shapiro. If we can make that correction. Are there, yes.
Excuse me, Bloom Shapiro merged with another firm several years ago, and they're now known as Clifton Larson Associates.
So should that be the correct name noted?
Yes, that's who we're working with now. That's the name they go by.
Okay, so if we can make that correction to the minutes, that is Clifton
Larson,
Larson.
L-A-S, I believe it's E-N Associates, C-L-A.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other changes to the minutes? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the minutes with the necessary corrections can either verbally or raise your hand electronically.
Sorry, Greg, one last thing. It's actually Clifton Larson Allen, not Associates.
Okay, if we can make sure we get that. Thank you.
That's A-L-L-E-N.
There we go. Let's see. I saw Diana's hand. Nora and
I'm
John.
yes for everything unless I chime in, please.
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you. Okay, the minutes are approved of the stated corrections. Moving on to items 5, 6, and 7. We have the Claims Committee report of May 2023, the narrative on the tax collection dated May 2023, and the monthly tax collectors report dated April 2023 to be presented by Lisa B., our tax collector. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. First on my agenda would be the claims, but we do not need any action from the committee this evening on the claims. They're all beneath the threshold. So that report, the claims report for the month of May, is for informational purposes only, with no action being required. So with your permission, moving on to the narrative and the end of month that reflects the month of April 2023. With regard to current collections, we were at 98.16% through the end of April, with still 2 months left to go in the fiscal year, which is great. That's right where we need it to be. We're just slightly behind where we were last year. With regard to delinquent collections, you're still seeing the effects of the erosion to our receivable because of the court stipulated judgments. But that being said, the collection agency that we hired that started working with us in November of 2022 is continuing to bill on our behalf, and things there are going well. We're also starting to work on another wage garnishment for city and Board of Ed employees, and we are working with our health department on health permits for any establishment that has a health permit. They are required to not have taxes going back more than 1 year. So when they are coming to our attention that there are some establishments out there that are still operating, we bring it to the health department's attention and they're working with us. So that is a very effective collection enforcement tool that we make use of with the cooperation of the Department of Health. We had planned originally at the beginning of the fiscal year to have a tax sale this summer in July of 2023. That would be the normal time to do it. We were not able to get that sale off the ground due to the computer issues and other challenges that we had with the delayed billing and so forth. So we've made the decision to put that sale off until next summer. We don't think it will impact our collections at all. You can see from the monthly report that we're on target to where we need to be to meet our budgeted collection goals. Normally, we would start working on a tax sale in the November before the sale. So we'll start working on that sale this November, in November of 2023, and have the sale the 3rd or 4th Monday of July 2024. So we did want to bring that change to your attention. We are continuing to work with our new software vendor. We have not yet finished the things we need to finish to wrap up this fiscal year in terms of filing tax lien continuing certificates and working on our suspense list, but we are making progress. That should probably be completed, I would say, by the time I come before you again next month. We're also setting our sights on our new billing. This will be our initial first billing on the QDS software system. So our division will be working with Paul's division to get that billing off the ground. We anticipate hopefully getting those bills out at the very, very latest by the last week of June. We're sort of anticipating a couple bumps in the road, but we still want to get them in the mail as soon as we can. But there's different things that have to happen within the assessment division, particularly relative to motor vehicles and elderly and disabled tax credits. So we can't do anything on our end until they're ready on their end. So Paul and I will work together to get that done. And the other very good news that I have for you is through the efforts of the HR department, we did finally get our 2 new hires. They started the first week of May. So the tax collector's office is now fully staffed for the first time in about 15 months. And we appreciate the help that Tina and her staff gave us to recruit and onboard 2 excellent new employees. So things are going very well in my division. I'm very happy to report, and I'm glad to answer any questions that any of you would have.
Lisa, if you can share how the software conversion is going. I know last month you shared that there were some hiccups, but you were moving forward. So just curious to know how things are progressing at this point.
Still a few hiccups, primarily with processes that happen once a year. So for example, my process to file lien continuing certificates, it's the first time I'm doing that on this system. And the biggest problem with this system, frankly, is that there's no manual. And it is something that I have been highly critical of the company. They say they're just not able to produce one because they make so many changes to the system. But we're making our own manual, but it's very, very hard to work on a system when you don't have any written instructions and you have to call the vendor every time you run into a brick wall. And that's basically where we're at. But in terms of payment processing and things like that, it's going very well. The staff adapted very well to it. I'm concerned about the bills going out, but that's another hurdle to jump over. I'm trying to get the things done that we need to end the fiscal year first and then do the new billing after that. But it's not going as well as I had hoped, but we're committed to making it work. We don't have any other options right now. So we're just going full steam ahead. I hope that responds to your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Greg, could I add a comment, please?
Sure, absolutely.
As Lisa said, the difficulty is a lack of manual. And therefore, as we get the system up and running the first time, that's where we're getting the hiccups. Cities, towns, and individuals who have used this over the years have told us that once you get over that hurdle and you have all of these processes in place, it's a great system. Paul Gorman has used it for a number of years in other locations. So the optimism we have is that Lisa is very thorough and diligent, and she's identifying all the issues when they occur daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or annually. And once we get those patched, we're hoping that this system will work as well for us as it has in other cities.
I have to just add one thing, and that is that it's not as great a system as they tell you it is. The liens that I'm trying to file, the language on those liens is outdated and it's not in conformity with the statutes. It doesn't have the proper gender reflections in it. So a lot of this system has really not been looked at in a very long time. That being said, I am very nitpicky. And I have to have everything that comes out of our division as perfect as it can be. So we're making all these changes. They will probably be able to use those changes and upgrade their system and sell it to other municipalities. But it is not without a tremendous amount of effort on the part of my division, particularly the assistant tax collector, Al Palumbo, who's trying to get this system to produce reports for districts and types of billings that other towns do not do that Norwalk does. Our sewer system, the way we bill for sewer use, the way our districts operate and things like that. The system did not accommodate it well, but we're getting there. So.
Well, we appreciate you and your team's dedication to detail. It's of major importance, so it's greatly appreciated.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure.
Great. And as far as the tax collection rate, are you seeing 99% in the future?
I hope so. I hope
Great.
so. Yeah. But with the 60-day collections, absolutely. Between now and the end of August, absolutely.
Great. Does any committee member have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing, seeing none, these items will move the claims report as information only, the narrative and monthly report to the full council meeting on Tuesday, May 23rd.
Thank you. And we'll see you next month.
I should, do we have a motion to approve those items? Yes, I see the hand from Nora Nadelsky Eichner. Thank you. All those in favor, show by a raise of hand virtually or verbally. And I believe Mr. Cotty's indicated he was a yes, so it's approved unanimously, so it will move forward to the May 23rd full council meeting. Moving on to the next item on agenda 8, which is the tax assessor's update on the revaluation process. And we have Paul Gorman, our assistant tax assessor, to give us an update on how the reval is going.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you again this month. Within the agenda, you'll see the spreadsheet that was provided by Vision Government Solutions project manager Gary Fields that indicated that they had at that time visited 43% of the homes in town and 33% of the commercial properties. I did receive an update, but it was too late for it to get into the agenda late on Monday evening, that as of Monday, they were up to 50% of the homes and 37% of the commercial properties have been visited. Both those numbers are on track with what we were expecting and what Gary and his team were expecting for at this point in time in the year. They are starting probably next week to send out letters to all those people who were visited, but that were not home. And the information that's necessary wasn't able to be gathered from looking at the house from the street or taking a quick walk around. So sending out letters to give those people an opportunity to set up an appointment. The next thing in line also, which should be occurring probably sometime in mid to late June, will be the data mailers being mailed out to all homeowners so that homeowners can have an opportunity in writing to let us know if anything has changed about their house or if any of the details that we have just happen to be inaccurate over the course of time. Sometimes mistakes are made and don't get caught until a revaluation is performed. And then the last thing I was informed today, it looks like we're going to be trying to address some of the issues that have been occurring with homeowners being surprised by people knocking on their doors. And that Michelle Wood said that there'll be a robocall going out from Mayor Rilling next week with updates about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Outside of that, I can also agree with Lisa. Yes, there have been some hiccups. For our side, QDS seems to be running pretty smoothly, but there have been some problems that we're overcoming with its interaction with our other major software, which is our assessing valuation software called Vision. Not that they don't normally work well together. It's just that there was some programming in Vision that we didn't have that we had to implement over the last couple of weeks. So now we're getting a lot more accurate information transferring between the two softwares. And outside of that, we're progressing smoothly and hopefully going to be providing Lisa with a good file to get those bills out in a timely fashion. At this time, that's about all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Paul. And it's great that we're going to utilize the robocall system. Any other suggestions to further alert the community about the reval? I know we have information posted on the website, but I'm just curious as to is there any other way that we can alert the various communities about the reval?
I know some of the taxing districts also posted information to their sites, and
Okay.
Michelle and customer service are getting together tomorrow. And I think I'm going to be invited to the meeting to try to come up with some other ideas about other forms of communication that could be used to get the word out even further.
Great. Okay, any comments or questions from the committee on the reval process?
Just very briefly, thank you for doing the robocall. I appreciate you moving that idea forward. And I look
I was actually going to say that
or
exact
more
same
thoughts on how
thing.
this can be communicated better.
You're welcome.
I just want to emphasize the same thank you on that. Because that's actually one of the questions I brought up directly about having a call forward. So, and I know this committee overall has asked for, just maybe a heads up to the community, so that robocall is amazing. I'm glad for Mr. Jussie Eisner and bringing that up, Councilwoman Jussie Eisner, but I do appreciate something being followed up with that. Thanks.
You're welcome. And just so that everybody can be self-assured, if I'm sitting in this chair 5 years from now or 4.5 years from now, because that's when we'll be starting the next one, it's on my list of things to do to start off the reval with the robocall and maybe a letter to everybody in the mail, or maybe put it in as a letter in the tax bills that go out as a reminder of what's going to be going on.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Paul, for the update, and we'll look forward to getting an update during our June meeting as we continue this process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. Moving on in the agenda, item 9, which is to receive the Oak Hills Authority monthly financial statement. We'll postpone the update from Oak Hills till next month, and we'll in the June meeting we'll receive an update from Oak Hills covering March and April of 2023. Moving on to item 10, which reads as follows: authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into professional services contract addendum with Kavanaugh McDonald Consulting LLC. And do we have a motion on this item?
Motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Diana Revelous. And we have with us our Chief Human Resource Officer, Tina Fogel, to present the item. Hello, Tina.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. So we've made this request in order to assist with our pension calculations. Our longtime benefits manager has recently retired. Her last day of work with the city was April 14th. And as we've worked with the mayor's office to determine how we're going to appropriately staff the human resource office, I worked with Chitsame and Kavanaugh, and we had determined that this would be our best bet going forward in the short term, at least, was to request that we have an addendum to the contract. We've estimated the cost to be about $60,000. That would include an initial setup fee of $35,000 for them to get the data. It would be fire, police, and the city pension. So they would handle all of those calculations for us. Additionally, there would be, once the setup is completed, each time we made a request for a pension calculation, it would be a charge of $350, which is we calculated that in. And the other item that we were really excited about was that there's an $8,000 cost, but that's so that we can send out annual pension estimates. That's something that since I've been here this last year, that especially from the Board of Ed, but from all employees, I've been getting that request. I guess previously, maybe many years ago, they received an annual statement. There may have been some issues with that. I'm not really sure, but that practice was stopped. And so this way we would be able to provide an annual statement to all city employees so that they could maybe better plan for their retirement. They'd at least, we would still have to do the calculation to figure out what the full, pension benefit would be, but they'd at least have an estimate so that when they start to talk about planning, they could think about years of service and things like that. So we hope to obviously add this to the contract for now. We will continue with the mayor's office to determine how we're going to staff to move forward. At this point, we do plan to fill the position, but we believe that outsourcing our pension calculations would actually ensure accuracy, because we're dealing with an actuary that has, that deals with this information all the time. And Kavanaugh has been a great partner in dealing with the pension and the pension board.
A question, Tina, is the amount of the addendum still under discussion, or do we know what the amount is?
So we would have to pay the initial $35,000, and then the $8,000 for the pension statement if it was allowed. The issue that will be is that it's $350 per calculation, and that obviously depends on the number of employees who choose to retire. So we estimated it at 70. That's where we got the remainder, and that's where we came up with the full $60,000. We'll continue obviously to monitor that. We may not hit that number, but we looked at some historical data and we thought that that was safe based on both, like I said, the Board of Ed as well as city retirees.
And the reason why I asked the question, as I look at the authorization, it did not include a dollar amount or a account number. So do we know what account the funds are coming out of?
So I believe, and Tom, maybe you can help me out. Tom and I had a conversation. I believe that if the addendum was approved, that I would then have to go to BET to request for a transfer from one of our line items to pay for this. Right, Tom? Is that what we discussed?
Yeah, in all likelihood, it would be contingency at this point. Human resources, unlike police and fire, does not have a whole lot of flexibility at this point. And we can get that in with the June BET meeting. What is it, June 5th? So.
Okay. Does any members of the committee have any questions related to this item or comments? Okay, hearing seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of this authorization show by a raise of hand or verbal confirmation. All right, I see all hands up, and those opposed have the same right. Any abstentions? So the item is approved unanimously, and we'll move this item to the full council at the next meeting on Tuesday, May 23rd.
Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Moving on in the agenda, item 11, which reads as follows: authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into a 3-year contract with 3SG Plus LLC for Highland On-Base EDMS, Electronic Document Management System, annual amount not to exceed $30,000 for a total not to exceed $90,000, account number noted. Do we have a motion on this item?
Motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Diana Revolus. And we have with us Joyce Liu, our IT Director, to cover this item.
Good evening, everyone. So this agenda item is for the 3-year software subscription of the Electronic Document Management System, and short for EDMS, and for the multiple city departments. So city joined a pilot document management system program with the 5 other town and city through the Capital Region Council of the Governments back in 2017. Squawk's contract with the 3SG Plus is expiring at the end of this June. So for the city departments to continue using the software and the services, we renegotiate with the 3SG and the attachment. You can find the agreement in the attachment in the agenda. So currently, both Public Works and Planning and Zoning Department, they have been managing their maps on the EDMS system. So this software integrate closely with our ESRI, which is ESRI GIS interface, and provide viewing tools for all the engineers. So not only do we have a centralized map system to share map between departments, but we have the ability to view the maps on the GIS interface anywhere that help our engineer that work efficiently on the remote construction sites. So right now we have around 6,000 DPW utility infrastructure maps and around 350 plus planning and zoning maps on the EDMS system. And we plan to expand the usage to the other city departments. I'm here to answer any question you have for this agenda item.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee members? Yes, Councilmember Nora Najelski-Eichner.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Joyce, for this presentation. I just, I feel like we're kind of sort of getting a series of, new document management systems, and new systems for that. And on the one hand, I totally applaud. It's obviously things that we've needed for a long time coming. But it just, what is our sort of, again, it sort of is an overall question of kind of, what are we doing to make sure that, some of these challenges that finance is running into with a system that is manual lives, and this question of sort of, how our systems are coordinating with the systems being used by other agencies in the state or by, our council, our Western Council. I just, I don't know, I'm just sort of checking. I'm sure these are things you think about, but could you talk a little bit about your process for sort of evaluating, whether we're getting the right system with the, greatest potential longevity, and sort of compatibility with other things going on?
Sure, I'm happy to explain that a little bit more on this item. So basically, we last year actually the CROG is a contract. Actually, we have extended contract from last year. So their contract actually ended last year. We are the only city among the 5 town and city that implemented the EDMS. So basically, the major user in the city is public work. So we send them to go for the EDMS training, and they're using that almost every day to update the map. And when the contract was going to expire last year, we were I asked myself, hey, at that time is that's the previous IT director was making that decision. So I say, I really owe myself a chance to looking around the surrounding towns or city or on the market, what is a good EDMS software out there. And I've been going through vendors and have a demos. And circling back, I still felt that the ARM-based system that we are using have a solid, it's a SQL, Microsoft SQL base, and it's a solid software that providing so many options that we have. When we have the contract through with under CROG, actually, we are just one of the tenant. So one of the tenant under that contract. But right now, when by renegotiate the contract by ourselves, we have all the possibility that in the agenda you will see a list of the items that we can utilize. So it's kind of open another door for us. So when we were under the cross contract, we were have so many limitations. Then, so after I realized this is so many so many options, so many functions, and we can use, it become very, that it become a no-brainer that we are, stick with on base. So this is so I think we at least go through 3 or 4 different vendors, have the demo, and there's I still believe that ARM-based is the software that we can go stick with for a long term. So that's why I said, once we stick with, we have the contract with them directly, we are going to plan to expand, start promoting the software for the other department. So currently, Nora, you mentioned about the finance system. In our ERP system, which is Munis we are using, we do have a content management system within that Munis, but that's all like a document related for the financial document, for any requisition, purchase order, attachment, invoices. That is financial related document management system. And so I would think anything other than the financial document system that this ARM-based system will be able to handle. Yeah, so for the long run, it will be a forever home for every software that if they are they say, okay, the city have an EDMS system, and then they can go through the interface and save the document into this ARM-based system. Then IT can write a program to do the filtering or to do a lookup. So we will have a centralized document management throughout the whole city. So that's our goal. Do I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That's very
Okay.
helpful. And certainly it seems like it would be a great goal to have a single document management system for the whole city. I mean, certainly anything that streamlines would be all to the best. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Joyce, if you can expand on that, what's the timeline on that? In your thinking in terms of having one centralized document management system for the entire city? Is it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
Actually, right now we start with 2 departments, right? And actually, the code enforcement building department, they are using Municity software. All the Municity software is the overnight, all their document is saving into this EDMS system. So we decide we will continue to doing this. So idea is any new software coming on board, our existing software, and we can offer this as an option, say, hey, we are using this EDMS, and you can call this function, which is the interface, API interface, and they can save the document as a copy into our EDMS. So for the long run, every department will be saving their information on this EDMS if their software is, if their software is open to do some programming, so it requires certain programming on the software end. So it depends on the vendor. For example, if a QDS have all the documentation attaching into the QDS system, we can say, hey, can any document that you save in QDS, can you overnight also send saving into our EDMS system as a copy? So we will have, if I type the keyword of the location 125 East Avenue, all the document associated with the map, a document, a contract, everything will be centralized in here. Yeah, so we will be able to looking up to it. But like all the other document, like our law department also have their document management system. That's for the corporate lawyer, that all the contracts. So we can, if we want to, we can have the nightly backup copy and save into our EDMS. So it will be centralized for, as a backup for every single document out there. So the timeline of this is like, first, we finally have a contract with them. So now we can fully utilize all the functionality, but we are, we are still not new to this, even though we are using this software for a long time. But as far as all the other functionality, that's the first time offered to us, since, because we are not the one that's signing a contract with them. So, so we are going to explore more. So my take is I'm looking over with all the software that currently City have, and I can start contact with the vendor, with our software and vendor, to see if that's an option that they could, and what's the fee, what is the cost for them to, deliver their all the document on their server into our EDMS system. So that is as far as timeline. I would like to, first go over with all the other vendors and make sure that they are, they have ability to utilize our EDMS system.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And as far as backup capability, I mean, if we go to a system where the entire city's using one document management system, what's the backup capability to ensure that all of our documents not only are secure, but also there's a backup should there be any concerns or problems.
Right. So so that's, well, most of the city's document actually is in, once we have this the contract with the EDNs ourselves, we can allocate different kind of we can divide the different kind how do you call it? We can divide it into different kind of piles. So maybe for health department, they are HIPAA related. We need to have a put in in the system. We are going to define it into the different more security location. So in the EDMS system, there is a way to say, okay, for law department, and there's the information that only law department people can see it, and there's for health department only health department employee can see it. So we can add additional more security on top of that. But currently, what we have is just maps, so we haven't got to explore that option yet. But with this on base, they have ability to control different kind of group viewing different kind of document. So that is very important when it comes to the document management system. Like we need to have a different secure right for different group to see different things. Right.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments relating to this authorization? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, show by virtually raising your hand or verbal. Let's see, Councilmember Diana Revelous, are you voting? Okay, Diana, we need a vote. Okay, I'm not seeing her vote. I know Mr. Cardi said he was positive.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, my phone.
All those opposed have the same right. I don't see any, so this item is approved unanimously, and we'll bring it forward to at the next council meeting for full council approval on Tuesday, May 23rd.
Thank you for your support. Thank you so much. Have a
Great,
good
thank
evening.
you. Moving on to item 12, which reads as follows: resolution making appropriations for various public improvements aggregating $48,440,692 for the fiscal year 2023-2024 capital budget, and authorizing the issuance of $48,440,692 general obligation bonds of the city to meet certain appropriations in fiscal year 2023-2024 capital budget. Do we have a motion on this item? Thank you, Councilmember Diana Revelous. And we have our Chief Financial Officer, Henry Dakowitz, along with our Budget Director, Tom Ellis, to outline this particular resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we do every year, we go through a capital budgeting process, and the end of which, after the council and the BET have approved it, we look for this authorization, which gives me and my office the ability to bond for these capital projects. As I've said for a number of years, there is a disconnect between the capital budget that's approved every year and the amount of money that we borrow and bond every year. Capital budget is based on the needs that we have at this moment and in the projected future. The amount of money we bond every year is based on cash flows. There are very strict IRS requirements which say when you borrow tax-free, you must spend the money within a certain required timeline, usually 2 to 4 years. Consequently, we have, as of today, 175 million of approved capital projects for which we do not have funding. Last year was the first time where we issued more bonds than the annual capital budget. And that was because we started seeing cash flow projections that were based on the older projects that had not been funded in the past. And we borrowed the money, $82 million worth, $90 million of proceeds, in order to have sufficient money for the department managers who are running these projects, but at the same time, being in compliance with all the IRS rules. So the way we do it is every year we ask for this authorization so that these new projects will be included in all of our unfunded capital projects. Shitsune, our controller, has gone out to all of the department managers who manage capital projects. And based on the results of those cash flow projections, that's how much we will end up borrowing this summer in our annual borrowing. So I thank you for the support to give us the authorization for this year's capital budget. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions or comments for our Chief Financial Officer? Yes, Councilmember Nora Nadolski-Eichner.
Hi, Henry. So obviously good news about our bond rating, and tremendously excited to have the rating agencies recognize the hard work that the city has, done over the years to maintain our pensions and our OPEB. That's just really, I think, terrific to have that acknowledged. But I just wanted then, to hear quickly sort of, going forward, what this means for our capital expenditures. Obviously, it seems like it takes the pressure off. But I know that you also have been trying to, nonetheless be thrifty and think about, if we have old items that, need to be rolled off, et cetera. So I just wanted to kind of, if you could give a little bit of a status update of kind of what you think our capital budget situation is, for the next year or two going forward.
Thank you for that question, Nora. In case people are not aware, we currently have $360 million of bonds outstanding. And our financial advisor, Bill Lindsay, and I did an analysis about 16 months ago now, a year ago, January, in which he estimated, he looked at all the AAA cities and towns and AA cities and towns in Connecticut. And he looked at the financial statistics, and we also looked at the bond rating criteria from Moody's, who is usually the strictest. And we determined that $400 million looked like the limit before we start getting into a danger zone where we might be downgraded from AAA to AA. And looking at this year's current borrowings, what I feared was that if we needed to borrow more than that $40 million balance before the danger zone, we might have to go back to department managers who are running these projects based on their cash flow and say, no, you can't spend all the money, just like we go through the budget process regularly, and say we have to limit ourselves to the 40 million that we could borrow. I asked Bill for a formal memorandum about a month ago to document what that number was, so that if we had to sit down and make those tough choices, we had the documentation right there. He told me it was a very good fortuitous timing because Moody just changed their data rating criteria. And a number of cities in Connecticut were put on credit watch, meaning there was a possibility of a credit downgrade based on new criteria. Amazingly, after doing this year's analysis, Bill said the new criteria work in our favor. What Nora was referring to earlier was that we are 75% funded in those 4 pension funds that Tina was talking about earlier. Our OPEB other post-employment benefits, which means healthcare benefits for our retirees. More than half of Connecticut cities do not even have a trust fund for that. We are 95% funded, which puts us in the top 5%. It's remarkable. It's outstanding. It's a combination of what's been done by the mayor, the council, and the board of estimate over the last 5 years. We fully funded what the actuaries told us was our minimum requirement. And then we got fortunate with some very good investment results. So just to put it in contrast, the state of Connecticut, as are other states like California and Illinois, only 50% funded. Many billions of dollars of liabilities that are unfunded, and it causes all sorts of strain in the annual budget. So we are fortunate that we are very well funded. The Moody's change in analysis just took those facts and built them into the actual rating. And we got the benefit of that. So Bill Lindsay's conclusion was we could borrow up to 500 million without the danger zone of losing the AAA. I'm still concerned because when we look at our annual debt service cost, that's the annual operating budget item that pays for the interest and repayment of principal of our bonds every year. One of the statistics that are observed by the rating agencies is what's the ratio of that debt service to our total operating expenses. And when it's 10% or more, that's also a hallmark of a AA. And we are getting dangerously close to that. So while the good news is it looks like we can go above the 400 million, given our economic statistics and our grand list and all the other factors regarding our economy and finances, it's still dangerous. And we have to watch the capital borrowing as much as we can, especially with inflation, where 2 years ago we borrowed at 1.75% annual rate for 30 years. And then 1 year ago, we borrowed at 2% for 30 years. The rates are much higher now. And consequently, we're still watching it carefully. Based on the cash flow projections Chisme and I reviewed, it looks like that we will borrow about $55 million for the city and the Board of Ed, and another 10 million for the WPCA. And the WPCA credit rating is separate because they charge enough to cover all the debt service. So it's really the 55 million, which gets us to 415 million. So we're excited about not having bumped up against that ceiling, but at the same time, the economics of our city doesn't mean it's a total freebie. The debt service will go up as we keep increasing the total debt and we borrow at higher interest rates. So it's something I watch, but for at least this year, it looks like we are okay. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. That was very helpful.
You're welcome.
Henry, quick question. Based upon your response, do you think that we are at the point where we need to go back and revisit our capital projects?
Well,
Or if I understand correctly, I believe that's a normal course of business that we do that.
I think that's just good financial practice. Okay. So we have the backlog of approved capital projects that were not funded. Last year was 225 million. And after we borrowed that 82 million, it went down to 175. Okay. Again, this year, if we borrow 55 million and this year's budget, Tom, help me, was it about 40 million that was approved? You're on mute.
Sorry, yeah, 35 for fiscal 23, 40 million for fiscal 24.
Okay, so the point is, if we're going to borrow 55 million and the capital budget was 40, So we are eating away and reducing the unfunded approved capital projects, hopefully from 175 to about 160. Having said that, that's a tremendous overhang. And unless our grand list keeps expanding at a very large rate, which we don't see right now, that's going to be the constraint, and it may be a concern. So if we don't have that borrowing capacity, the other alternative is to look at all of those projects, including this year's, because now it's part of the approved but not yet funded, and say, do we really need all of this? I've said before, there might be projects with 10 parts and maybe we only do the most important 6 parts. I've seen in other jurisdictions where I was the CFO or treasurer, where a project with I'm going to show my age, with a Volkswagen approach might be 3 million, but after you get the Cadillac, it's 10 million. And maybe we have to sharpen the pencil and say, how much do we really need? And additionally, we have inflation. Some of these projects that were approved, the costs when they come in will be higher. So I worry about being able to afford all of this without extraordinary increases in our mill rates and taxes. So I don't think we're out of the woods. I think we're okay for this summer, but those capital budget items in the range of 160 to 175, it will cost a lot of money and a lot of debt service to pay for. And what happens on the operating budget side is that the debt service line, which I believe went from 35 million last year to 40 million in fiscal year 24 in this year's budget, keeps growing because both the amount of debt and the interest rate is going up as we add new layers of debt. And it starts to crowd out other expenses that we need to fund. So if we get to 10 or 12% of the total budget, either we have to cut expenses somewhere else or raise the taxes. So I think we still have issues going forward, but for right now, we got lucky, and the rating agencies are going to recognize the good work we've done on the pensions and OPEB, but I don't think we're out of the woods, and I think it would be a good idea to review all of these projects, given where we are today financially, to say, maybe we put them in different priority order. Maybe we stretch them out over 5 or 10 years. Every year we pay back a certain amount of our principal. So if let's say $20 million of bonds mature, we can issue $20 million more of debt without increasing our total outstanding debt. It's probably at a higher interest rate until inflation comes down, but at least it gives us some room and capacity to pay for all these projects.
Thank you for that, for those comments. I guess the watchword is proceed with caution.
I would definitely say that is appropriate.
Councilmember Diana Revelous.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, I don't even know how to express this, but Mr. Dackwitz, I think if you recall, we've had not several, but the conversations we've had behind the scenes, I guess, in states a while ago. I just want to express, you've expressed this already. And just to, and not in a angry type of way, like you've been telling this to us for quite some time. So I just want to express that your expertise in gearing us in a proper manner, but in the facts that we really do need to pay attention to the things that we are okaying and the requests that are coming to the city towards our budgets that will affect our mill rates, because it's coming to a space and place where we will, again, either have to do some things or cause our constituents a little strangulation in their abilities to fund a lifestyle that they would like to see in Norwalk. So I just wanted to say, just commend you on your work and bring back to the reminder that I think this is maybe for as long as I've been here, which hasn't been long, I think your second, like, watch out, come to us in the most polite way you can. And I just thank you for your narration, but also want to stress the fact that maybe we should kind of pay attention a little stronger.
Well, Diana, thank you for your comments. They're very much appreciated. I guess it just occurred to me that there might be an approach, and part of the problem is all of the projects are worthy. They're all to help the city grow, to be better, to increase the quality of life. So when you look at individual projects, each one looks good. The problem is when you move back like a zoom camera lens and you get the big picture, the question is the affordability and the trade-offs. That's what it's all about. We can't do everything for everyone at what I'm going to say the Cadillac quote in the nearest 3 years. But if it's not a Cadillac, if it's not over 3 years, if we just prioritize and try to space it out, that's what we're all trying to do. And I just try to voice the financial realities, always looking to the taxpayers, because ultimately they have to pay for this. But you people are the elected officials. The mayor and you are the ones who have to make the really tough decisions. And all I'm saying is, let's be cognizant. And as Greg put it very appropriately, let's approach with caution. And I'm happy to work with all of you to try to figure out a way to make sure we're on a safe financial course for the future.
And as we thank you for it.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions on the capital budget? Okay, hearing seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of approval of this resolution, show by a raise of hand virtually or verbal. And again, I'll take Mr. Kais as a yes, so it's unanimous. This will move this resolution to the full council for full council approval on Tuesday, May 23rd.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 13 on the agenda, resolution reads as follows: requesting there's an update in the wording. Instead of it stating building department, the resolution should read as follows: resolution requesting the Office of Building Management project in the amount of $5,374,000 from the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act Fund, account number noted, Norwalk Community Recreation Center renovation. Do we have a motion on this item?
Motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Diana Revolus. And we have with us from Building Management, Alan Lowe, to give us the narrative on this item.
Good evening. Before I start, I was wondering if Henry or Tom may do a little introduction of where we are at Opera Fund, which is not my area of expertise. So I think if you either one of you can do the pleasure of just kind of explaining how much is there, how much is spent, and what's coming in front of us, so that again, that's an overall picture that maybe you want to introduce that first.
Alan, as always, we appreciate that you spend the money and we find it.
Spend it wisely, I guess that's the most important part, right?
But Linda's another expert. So when things get tough, we go upstairs and ask him, how do we get this done? Thank you. As people know, the ARPA money, okay, I'll probably get the letters wrong and Tom will have to correct me. American Rescue.
It's American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA.
I thought it was going to be an association again. Okay, so ARPA. So I won't say it's a gift, but this was the federal government working with cities to try to help them post-COVID. We were allocated two amounts, one as a city in Connecticut, and because Connecticut doesn't have county governments, the state obtained and allocated based on per capita, how many people are in each city. The total together for the city side was about $39 million in change. I know Linda and the Board of Ed got certain amounts separately for the Board of Ed. And the question, which was a challenge to the administration, was how do we best utilize these funds? So we've used some of them to offset tax increases. We felt that way all of the taxpayers in the city would benefit from these funds. So it reduced some of the tax increases we've had in the last 2 years. At the same time, there were projects that were identified which complied with some pretty specific guidelines from the US Treasury Department. And we were allowed to allocate those funds. You and the council in total were aware of these. We've allocated them. What happened was last year, or let's call it fiscal year 22, we had budgeted $7 million to use for ARPA to get the budget balance, and we didn't need it. So Chisholm has done a great job keeping track of all the ARPA funds, making sure we receive them and where they are allocated and how they're used. So we put that $7 million back, called it available to be used. And with that 7 million, I think we were, I'm going to say 9.5 million, 9.2 million, which we had left to allocate. One of the issues is that ARPA has some strict deadlines, and we have to allocate the money by the end of this calendar year. That was done on a calendar basis. We are on a fiscal basis of June 30, and the actual spending has to be done. I believe we have 2 more years. So there is an allocation made of that 9.2 or whatever that total was. And that's what's before you in the next several resolutions. Allen and building management is just the first of several, but that's where the big picture comes from. We have money left in ARPA. We want to designate it for certain projects that we feel are very beneficial to the city, and at the same time, comply with the US Treasury requirements. So Alan, I'll let you talk about your specific item and we'll go from there.
I could say any better. This is for some of you know, this project we're talking about is actually 98 South Main Street. I would say about 5 years ago, the city went out RFP to look for somebody to develop community center in a way to provide service to the Sub-North community. And through the RFP process, the city selected YMCA, and partially because of COVID and things changes and delays and stuff, that financial relationship wasn't working out to the point that, generally speaking, the city and the Y has moved apart from each other in terms of development of this project. And since then, together with the mayor's office, been working on an alternative program. And I think I would like to ask Robert Stoller to maybe talk about the most recent proposal in terms of developing a community recreation center. So Robert, you don't mind, maybe you can just talk about the idea a little bit. And also, I think the sequencing of this request coming to Finance Committee, it's kind of interplay with my planned proposal to submit a presentation to the Land Use and Building Management Committee and potentially a joint meeting with the Recreation Parks Committee the first Wednesday of next month. So to provide both committees a comprehensive view of what this program strategy would be, together with financing and cost estimates, so it'll be a full package. Currently, we have the city has allocated $1.2 million from I typically call it the mall fund, the money that the city received from the mall when it was developed. But 1.5, there's about $200,000, $300,000 spent so far for related use expenses. And then we also get $1.2 million from the state for this project, for the development of this 98 South Main Street. Concurrently, recently, the federal government allocated to the city, actually to the YMCA, $2 million, which we, the city and YMCA is trying to work out a resolution to how that money can potentially be transferred to the city somehow. Technically, it's a challenge, but we're trying to look for ways we can work together to see if the city can get that money for this project. So again, generally speaking, we're at $2.4 million right now, potentially another $2 million, a portion of thereof that will go for the Y from the federal government. So this will add potentially $3.7 million. The project is estimated about $10.5 million, which includes a building addition of a gym. That's why the price tag is that high. The gym itself probably costs around $3.7 million. A gym is very essential to a recreation center in South Norwalk. So with that, I want to stop and maybe Robert, you can go through some of the ideas that the Parks Department has in terms of programming side, and then I can answer any question the committee have after that. Thank you.
I think, as most of you know, can you hear me? By the way,
yes, we can.
We've been working on a master plan for the future of the Parks Department here in Norwalk, Parks and Recreation Department. And it's been a year-long study. We finally have a draft plan that has come to us and was required and due at the end of May. We are going to be going through a public process now for over the next 2 months to get public feedback and council feedback and feedback from the leaders here in government, so that we can finally get a final master plan for the Parks and Recreation for the next 10 years. The number one recommendation is for indoor recreation. And this is a result of many public engagement meetings, surveys, online engagement surveys, a demand study that went out. So a lot of data that we pulled together, but the number one recommendation is an indoor recreation facility. So I was approached to work on this project and to come up with, work with my staff, to come up with a program, a recreation program that would fit the building at 98 South Main and would satisfy the community. It would be a program, a recreation program that would have various elements that would satisfy the public. That means that we would have programs for families and youth, morning programs. We would have after school programs for high school, middle schoolers. And we're working on probably having some late night programs, which would be combined with educational, kind of what we call recreational education programs in various areas. Some STEM programs, also just some of the trends that are going on in parks and recreation, esports, of course, computer labs and mentoring after school, the music programs, studio programs, art programs, a variety of programs that would take place from 9 a.m. in the morning until 9 at night. And then on the weekends, maybe even later, we're thinking about having what we call late night, which keeps the teens off the street. As you know now, we don't have a place for teens to go. We have a program that every once in a while, there's a teen night somewhere and we create something for them to do. But this would be a facility, it would be in South Norwalk, of course. And that would, of course, it would adhere to all these kinds of things. And it's a common, more of a common core element of a park and recreation department to have a recreation facility. Of course, we don't always have the resources. We've heard Henry here talk about, spending money. And so we have been partnering with third-party providers, which has helped Norwalk tremendously to keep kids and youth off the street and keep them engaged in activities. But it comes a time when we have to face that, we can't continue to always depend on third-party providers when it's I believe it's the responsibility of a city to be responsible for their citizens' recreation and health and passive recreation. So we have put together, we worked with a person that is the chair of the Boys Club in Stanford. We put together a program that we then turned over to Alan to say, this is what we need. These are the rooms we need, this is the size of rooms we need for these particular activities, along with some big community spaces that the community could use for meetings, for various activities, rentals, birthday parties, what have you. So those rooms are also included in this facility. It's a 22,000 square foot facility. So it's not a small facility. And so, but there has to be a lot of renovation done to get these programs in the proper spaces. So we went about working with the Boys Club and Girls Club to a certain point, and we discovered that it would probably be, at least it would look this way, it would probably be better for us in terms of operations to sustain this building. A third-party provider could help us with some capital maybe, but could not really over a long period of time sustain the operations. And so, so this is what it has come to. We have a program. We have, and Alan will go over probably some estimates of the cost. We have a good program, we think, and Alan has put together estimates to get this work done, and he's been working now with some designers and estimators to give a more accurate estimate of the facility and what the needs are. When we talk about operating costs, we're also talking about staffing over time. So we now have a few positions we can use at the facility. And as we grow, and we'll have to rotate some of our current staff there. But I've been a director of recreation where I come from. It was one of my positions that I had over my 41-year period. So I'm capable of understanding how these park and recreation facilities work. And so we will need over time more money, more staff, but we think we have sufficient staffing now and once it is built to open up the facility. So it'll be a great addition to Norwalk. It will provide us with some indoor recreation, and the added gym will be an added blessing. And we just think it's a wonderful project that I think we should pursue and go ahead with. It puts us in the park and recreation game, and hopefully one day we maybe can add another more central community center in the center of town. So is that enough, Alan, or do you want me?
Oh, no, yeah. It's yeah, I just want to add something here is that I think that you don't have all the information in front of you because the intent originally was to go to the land use committee and pass the committee. I have developed a schedule, a cost estimates, some conceptual plan from one of the kind of architectural firm. And also Robert has done a very complete programming side and also included operating expenses items in it so that would be a very comprehensive proposal to the city in terms of like what this project would do and how much it costs and all that. But tonight's Henry has revenue coming in, so it won't be enough to cover the cost, but we always think in terms of we gotta generate some revenue from this facility. Over time it'll grow, but it's a start. So we have some projections for that. Yes. So I think tonight's request really just put the money aside to account Meanwhile, I will continue to work with both committee, and then I believe it's June 7 is the land use committee, and I talked to Councilwoman Darlene Young already, potential joint meeting together, and that we will have full presentation at that time. So that, and then I will send out the invitation to the full council so everybody's aware of it, and even those council members that's not on those two committee would be available. If they're available and interested in listening to the presentation, everybody's welcome to attend that meeting. So that is generally speaking the strategy and process in terms of getting this building lined up. Currently, there's only one tenant, technically two, but only one active tenant in the building, which is AmeriCare. Recently, the common council approved a short-term lease with them, with I believe it's a 90-day termination by either party. So they are looking for other potential permanent location, as well as us, that when we do develop project, we will give them proper notice that they understand that the city, if we are to develop this project, they most likely will not be a tenant of this building. And they're working with us and they are looking for potential other location to relocate to. So even though we have a 2-year lease, we recognize, they and the city recognize that this is a short-term relationship, and there's a strategy to move on for them. That's all I have.
Alan, can I ask a question or two, please?
Oh, sure.
So you mentioned total cost of about 10.5 million, 3.5 to 3.7 for the gym. First of all, it sounds like a great project and a great program. And with you and Robert in charge, I have great confidence it'll be great. Question, you mentioned 1.5 million from the Sono dollars we got, right? Okay, so assuming this gets approved, the 4.3 million. I accept.
No, Henry, the correct number that we're looking at is 5.3.
I got 5.37. So 5.4 plus 1.5 is about 7 million. So that's not 10.5. Do we have plans for the 3.5? Is that going to be future capital projects? What do you think?
This is what we have so far. The 1.5, this $200,000 spent. I did not manage this project back then. So I think 200,000 might have went to the purchase of the property from Neon back then. Okay. So a net to us right now is 1.2 from that money from the I always call it more money, but I'm not sure that's the proper term. And then the state have approved $1.2 million to us for the 90 South Main Street projects. So together we have 2.4 right there, right?
The 1.9 state reimbursement.
Yeah, it's a I assume it's a reimbursement grant, but they have a grant to $1.2 million.
Okay.
So there's 2.4 altogether. With this, it's 5.3 something, whatever that number is in front of us. So that's whatever. So the federal government has approved $2 million to the Y for this project. So again, the mayor's office is working with Y to see to find a way that the money could be transferred to us somehow to for this project. So potentially, I believe we are short around $700,000. I don't have a
okay. No,
so the potential $700 could be potential. So all this money we talked about so far, generally, I know it's still we all taxpayers, right? So even federal government money and state money is all our money. But generally speaking, in terms of local money wise, there's no allocation yet.
No, but this ARPA money makes up for what would otherwise be a capital project where we would have to borrow. So that's great.
Yeah. So potentially depends on how the relationship and the negotiation work with the Y. Like off the top of my head, I think we may be short around 2.7. Okay. So if you get part of that money or all of it, then we may be potentially, if you get all of it, we'll be probably short around 700,000.
Let me ask another question. Do you need all the money in hand to do construction, or can you do this modular piece by piece with the money that you know is there or committed?
This is going to be a very challenging project because when you have state money, federal money, and grant money and all that, there's different requirement for each one of these entities. So I would not start this project without all the money is committed, in the sense that because those regulations doesn't allow us to do certain things and stuff. So I need to make sure that the financial package, we need to be very well organized, and also the ability to sign contract. I can't rely on future like potential kind of thing. We really need the money in hand and in order to continue. One of the first things I need to do, subject to this committee's approval and the council and land use and recreation parks. The next step for me is that there's the quote unquote the more money is available to me already. So I would start going to go for RP process to hire architect and construction manager. We have some initial estimates from construction manager already, but we need to go through all that normal process, similar to what we do school halls, building construction projects, and go through all the steps necessary going because all these state and federal money require public biddings and RP process. So I really need to go through all that stuff to line everything up. So it is a very challenging financial and management project.
Right, so just thinking ahead a little bit, so this 5.4 million is a big chunk. And in fiscal 24, right? That would be the time to line up all the other monies. And to hopefully you could start design or whatever you have to do. And then until that renovation is done, Robert can't have his programs yet, right? You're gonna do the whole renovation first. And then we could then look at operating expenses on an ongoing basis. Robert, you may need staffing, and then we could look at projected revenues. So next year might be lining up all the dollars, then you do the construction, and then behind that, we would look at the operating expenses and potential annual revenue. Make sense?
Yes, I developed a detailed schedule already in terms of construction and approvals and on and on. So when I put the package together for recreation parks and land use for June meeting, I will forward a copy to you. So you had full understanding what this construction schedule is, the financial part is, and everything will be all neat and tidy.
Yeah, I'm just thinking ahead for next year's budget process with Tom, where we may have capital money and we may have to look at the operating expenses before we even generate revenue. So that's in the back of my head, but it sounds terrific. And it's just a question of time and lining up all the ducks. Thank you.
All right, so, we had a lot of internal meetings before we came in front of this committee. And we know that this is the right time to put this whole package in place. So we're gonna be ready for the next budget request with all the numbers that we're gonna need, not only on the capital side, but also on the operation side. The good thing is that we are not planning to start any operations next year. It will be on the following one, but we're gonna at least start laying out all the plan on what we're gonna be needed for future operation of the building.
Very good.
So I know, Alan, you mentioned the joint meeting on June 7th, but what is the projected timeline for this project, even if it's an approximation?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. I'm really quick to think. I think that by the time we got the bid, construction bidding will be spring of next year. It takes us about, I would say, by the time we go through the preliminary RP process for everything else, design everything. So I'm potentially looking at spring. It probably takes us about a year to construct. So we probably spring or be ready for spring of 2025. Right. So we are about 2 years away, generally speaking. And it's interesting when we do a smaller project. I mean, this is what we consider a smaller project, right? It takes about 9 months to a year to construct. The problem coming in today's world in construction is that equipment delivery, it's a problem. It's like tradition, like when you look at like Norwell High School, which is a 3-year project, deliver emergency generators and electrical switching gears and stuff, we make 2 years. But for a smaller project, we don't have 2 years because the project normal construction only 1 year. So there's all these construction related issues that I need to address. So again, back to your question. I'm thinking in spring of 2025 to somewhere 2025.
Yes, as of now, it's April 25, the project completion on our first baseline schedule on the draft one that you sent us.
Yeah, that's our goal.
Great, thank you.
Our construction of June 24.
Okay, so as Ms. Dackwitz outlined, this is one piece of the ARPA allocation that we have remaining. The total amount remaining appears to be $9.4 million. This is one piece of it, and the additional resolutions for us to review, discuss, and approve will be coming up shortly, but clearly this is a large piece of the funding for the Norwalk Community Recreation Center renovation. And thank you to all those that have provided the narrative on this item. With that, do we have any additional questions or comments related to this resolution? Councilmember Nora Najelski-Eichner.
I just wanted to echo your comments, Chair. This is tremendously exciting. It's something that I think the city has needed for a long time, and I'm very grateful to everyone who's putting it together, and I'm very excited to see. I mean, it is definitely a little strange to be sort of approving something with a little bit of a dearth of information, but I have great confidence in what the team will put together, and I'm really very excited that the ARPA funds can go to this terrific project. So anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing more, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of this resolution show by a raise of hand or verbal approval. And Mr. Cadiz indicated early in the meeting that he's in favor of these items, so it's unanimous. So this item will move forward to the full council on Tuesday, May 23rd for full council approval. With the understanding that there'll be a more detailed meeting on June 7th, but what we're doing is I'll say earmarking the 5.3 million towards the overall effort of the recreation center, at least with this action. Okay, great. Moving on to, thank you, Alan, appreciate it. Moving on to the item 14. Again, this is under the ARPA allocation. The resolution reads as follows: requesting the various Department of Public Works public improvement projects aggregating in the amount of $1,400,000 from the ARPA American Rescue Plan Act Fund, accounts noted in terms of pavement management program, $1,150,000, and account number noted for the municipal solid waste disposal service of $250,000. Do we have a motion on this item?
Motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Diana Revelous. And we have with us our Chief of Public Works, Vanessa Valadares, to give us the overview and narrative on this resolution.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. This is also a request that Public Works is doing. I'll say Public Works because part of the money will go towards the engineering and the other under operations to separate divisions under DPW. So the first one is the 1.150 4-hour paving program. Again, we are trying to minimize the impact that we have on our capital request. So that's why we're trying to get some of this extra money that we need to finish the forecast for the roads that we have for this year with this money. As you are aware, we have been paving more than ever. We've been increasing the miles of pavement of the roads that we did in this past few years, not only because of the support of you guys with the finance portion of it, but we're becoming more efficient because we're doing like a 3-layer look in our paving program. So we're looking first on, we're trying to identify what are the roads that are due for paving. And we, as soon as they come into our forecast, we look at drainage and utilities that need to be replaced or upgrade. Then we go back and look at sidewalks. If they are in poor condition, will be, of course, upgraded. If there are gaps, we're gonna close those gaps, and then we're finally for paving. Because we're approaching as 3 separate projects, we are now able to pave more roads because we're getting more roads ready. So we have been working on some of the roads in the past few years, and now we're ready to pave. So also there was, of course, increase in cost. Everybody knows that the price of oil went up, so of course affect a little bit of our asphalt price. But the main thing is that we are really able to pave more roads because we're becoming more efficient in the process. So instead of putting this extra request to be keeping up with our paving forecast on the capital, we would like to use some ARPA money for that. We already have the streets that we want to pave with this money. So if that money is approved, we're going to be able to spend this money by the end of this fiscal year. So this is the first portion of my request. The second portion is $250,000 for what we're calling a solid waste disposal. The reason for that money is, as you are aware, one of the biggest increase that we have in our operating budget this year was the expansion of our waste solid collection. That contract was extended for 1 year, and we'd like to engage a consultant company to take a very good look on how we are managing our solid waste system and come up with a plan and evaluate everything related to solid waste in the city and see how we should put our new contract out next year. So this money we already have an RFP out. We received the responses already last week. We are interviewing 2 companies. We have 3 responses. We should have a final candidate in about 10 days to bring in front of the public work committees and common council for award. So the reason for this $250,000 is to fund that service. That will be a consultant that will develop a very good solid waste management plan and help us on the bidding process for that contract.
Thank you, Vanessa, for that overview. One question that I have related to the paving, assuming the approval of the ARPA dollars for paving, how will residents know whether their street is going to be paved? Will we, you indicated that we've already, through the preparation, we've identified what streets we can go forward with this paving plan. Will that be publicized on the website, or how will residents know whether their street will be paved?
So thanks for asking that. So I just want to clarify that until a few years ago, actually until last year, we used to have a 5-year forecast of all the street that was going to be paved, and that was on our website. One thing that started happening is that we weren't able to keep up with that 5-year forecast for different reasons. Usually the last year was the year 4, and the year 5 was the one that ended up having more of the changes and was causing a lot of frustrations on the residents. Because you go to the website and you see that your street is going to be paved, let's say in 2025, and then gets to 2024, your street is not anymore on that list for the next year. So the reason why those streets keep moving is for a couple of reasons. So the first one is that if there is a major project that was going to happen on that road, we usually ended up pushing that road for future years. Another thing that was happening, of course, was funding, or if there were any development that we know that would happen in coming years, that sometimes if a big development will happen on a street, it's up to them after they bring all the utilities, hook up to the building, that they ended up paving that. We pretty much pushed that cost to them. So it was very hard to keep a realistic 5-year forecast. So last year we decided to take a different approach, and now we're doing a 3-year forecast. We still have a 5-year here, but we are pretty much just publishing a 3-year. So this way we don't get too many people upset. The list is finalized. We haven't published in the website yet because we are waiting for the capital budget request to be finalized. That just did. Now the list will be available on our website because, of course, we have kind of a wish list of all the roads that we want to do, but it depends on how much money we receive on our capital requests are really the list that we're going to be able to put out for that year. So before we came in front of you, we already know how much we have on capital this year, and we knew how much on this ARPA money. If that gets approved, we know exactly what we're going to be paid in the next few years. So as soon as we get this approval, we have a full list, and that will be published on our website.
Great, thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments related to this resolution? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of this resolution show by a virtual raise of hand or verbally. And as stated, Mr. Cotty said yes at the beginning, so it is unanimous. The resolution is approved, and we will move this forward to the next Common Council meeting on May 23rd for full council approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 15, which a resolution reads as follows: requesting for Parks and Recreations Department project in the amount of $160,000 from the ARPA American Rescue Plan Act Fund, account number noted. Do we have a motion on this item?
Motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Diana Revelous. And we have with us our Director of Parks and Recreation, Mr. Robert Sowers, to outline this particular project.
Okay, a couple of things activated this request. One was the pesticide restriction ordinance that was passed that requires us to do some type of organic land management plan. And two, our tree canopy master plan project that is underway now, that we are here in Parks are leading that project. Because of a lack of expertise in a lot of these areas, we're requesting the authority to hire a arborist slash naturalist, a naturalist with arborist credentials that will help us in these projects. It's a 2-year project that we will begin to manage our lands in such a way that our soils and our turfs will be taken care of in a more professional horticultural way. In the past, I think that because of a lack of resources and just the need to just keep everything clean and the grass cut and the shrubs pruned, we really didn't have the expertise for a land manager to really give us land management plans to our laborers to effectively and professionally keep our resources, our assets in a really healthy condition. We had, with the help of Lisa Shanahan and Tom Livingston, we had a company that provided some funds, about $10,000. The company was called Beyond Pesticides out of Washington, D.C. They came in, they tested 4 of our parks in terms of the soil. So we sent soil testing back to them. And through the soil testing, they evaluated the chemicals and the attributes of the soils in the turf. And out of that, they were to put together a land management plan to organically maintain our fields and our parks. they came back and said basically that the health of our soils and our turfs are so bad that really we need to renovate, do some land renovation of our lands and our parks in order to do organic management, or the best thing we could possibly do to keep the weeds and the things down, and it was to continue to use pesticides and fertilizers and things and such. So so what I wanted to do is bring in a horticulturalist, arborist that knows land management, and can instruct our laborers on the proper way of maintaining our properties, in our vegetation in such a way that we can, over time, we can have a plan to increase the health and viability of our parks and our soils. So that's one thing that we need this person for. The other thing is that we're working right now with a company called Plant It Geo. We have $150,000 contract with them to assess our tree inventory, to develop a planting plan, because we've been doing planting, but we're not doing it comprehensively. We're not doing it according to some theoretical plan. We're just kind of, if we see an area where we think trees need to be, it's kind of a guessing thing, and it's also a thing where people will call us, or we will do some kind of survey, or we'll knock on doors to get trees planted. Well, these guys are professional arborists. They're professional people who have worked with cities to restore tree canopies. And so they're working with us now to develop a master plan, not only to inventory and look at the health of our trees and determine some system to keep our trees healthy, to be alerted when trees are in danger, or they're failing, or there's a disease, to give us an alert system, and also to provide us with an ongoing maintenance plan. This person would work with Ken Hughes and the company to work closely with them, but then once the plan is developed, would work with our staff to implement and instruct to implement this plan. So this is something that most parks departments have in terms of gardeners, horticulturalists, arborists. And we know Ken is an arborist. Ken Hughes is a certified arborist, but Ken is spread out so thin with all these other duties, as all of us are. And so we need someone who can be dedicated to this and work under Ken. So it's a 2-year project. We're asking for this position. I think it's necessary because we're required to turn in the organic land management plan. We're also going to be required to implement this tree master plan. So come before you to ask you to pass this resolution so we can hire this person. We have the job description already written, and we passed it on to our HR department.
Thank you for that narrative. My initial question is, so what happens after 2 years? Is the plan to bring this position on beyond the 2 years, or is it the program, the plan is after 2 years, it comes to a close and this position no longer exists within Norwalk?
Well, we'll have a plan at least for our maintenance staff to carry on the plan, and our tree crews to carry on the plan. But yeah, I'm hopeful that we can get a full-time position. I think we need, we don't need all the elements of a big city, but we need the core elements. And part of parks, part of the health of parks is the horticultural planning and carrying out the horticultural plans that they develop for the laborers to maintain the vegetation in such a way that it remains healthy. So yeah, I would hope that in 2 years we can figure out a way to keep or hire a permanent position. But I don't think it's a requirement. I mean, we still need a plan that's developed for our people to carry out.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Nora Najewski-Eichner.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Robert. So it's obviously disconcerting to hear, about our poor soil quality. And I recognize that this is a complicated problem, but I hope that perhaps you and Vanessa will have your respective consultants coordinating. Obviously, compost is a great way to improve soil quality, and we as a city desperately need a better composting program. And perhaps there is an opportunity here to think a little visionary, push the boundaries a little bit, think about what it would take to start a large scale composting. I know we've had this conversation in Public Works before, that the city, when we do our leaf collection, for instance, or our yard waste collection, we actually truck that out to someplace else because we don't have the facility here for composting. So I know that's a big, complicated thing, but I would love to push both of you to really think about if there is a way that we can leverage solving one problem with a solution to another problem, particularly given this opportunity to use these funds to have people in place who are charged with sort of thinking big picture and creatively and long term. I would love to see it if we could align these missions in some way that would benefit would work on problem solving for both of our problems.
Yeah, I think it could work.
No, well.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments relating to this resolution? Hearing, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of approving this resolution show by raise a hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you. So we will move this item forward to the full Common Council on Tuesday, May 23rd for full council approval.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. And moving forward to our final resolution for today's agenda, item number 16 reads as follows: requesting the Norwalk Public Schools projects aggregating in the amount of $2,500,000 from the ARPA American Rescue Plan Act Fund, account number noted, BOE ARPA expenses. Do we have a motion on this item?
Motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Diana Revelous. And we have with us the Norwalk Public Schools Chief Financial Officer, Luna Asmani, to cover this particular resolution request. And just to, before Luna begins, as Mr. Dakowitz indicated, as we look at the ARPA dollars, what we've approved so far, pretty much with the assumption of this $2.5 million request will complete the remaining ARPA dollars that we have available. So over to you, Mr. Asmani.
Thank you, Chairman Burnett, and good evening, everyone. First, we do want to thank the mayor, the BET, and the entire Finance and Claims Committee for leading this effort of ARPA and for prudently ensuring that these ARPA dollars are spent well and are allocated and are used appropriately. So we thank you for your stewardship with this. We also want to thank the mayor and his chief of staff, Leisha, to give the Board of Ed the opportunity to identify these one-time items, which would assist us with our budget going into FY24, as the mayor had announced at a recent BET meeting. And then finally, thank Henry and your team for working with us. We've had a number of meetings back and forth reviewing these items, and we have both been patient with each other in getting this list together. So we thank you for getting us here. So what you have in front of you are a list of one-time items from the Board of Ed. They cover 5 main areas: facilities, maintenance within the Board of Ed, health supply for the health department unit of the Board of Ed, including nursing supplies in support of the children. Included here are also curriculum items, IT items, informational technology, and then some school-based items. And again, these are one-time items, non-recurring items that were identified for the budget. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Do we have any questions or comments related to this item? And before I acknowledge Councilmember Nora Nadjelski-Eichner, I want to say that, you know, this has been a difficult budget season, but I am elated that we were able to identify through ARPA dollars funding for one-time expenses to assist the good work of the Board of Education. And this is a great use of those dollars so that we can bring some type of relief to the challenging budget requests, but at the same time ensuring that the operations of the Norwalk Public Schools continues to move forward in a very positive direction. So just wanted to share that. Councilmember Nora Nadjelski-Eichner.
Thank you, Chair. So, Mr. Osmani, where does this sort of take the school's operating budget and sort of its overall picture, and how it is, you know, looking sort of in comparison to the projected budget we had seen earlier this spring?
Sure, thanks for that question. The city approved $226.5 million for the Board of Ed. That is our Board of Ed target, so our budget cannot exceed that. Our goal is to reconcile the ask with the amount that was approved. And therefore, this allocation, because these items that you have in front of you were part of that request, so this will go towards assisting us merging that gap and allowing us to get to the $226.5 million or so that was approved. Our goal is to approve a budget, reconcile a budget within that amount. The Board of Ed typically takes their final action on the reconciled budget at their June meeting. I believe June 20th is when they will vote on that number. And we're confident that we're still making adjustments within our internal budget, but this obviously assists us in making that target. But our budget will be the $226 million that was approved by the city for FY24.
So to provide further clarity, this 2.5 allocation is not, I should say, it's not affecting the minimum budget requirement. Is that correct?
That is correct. Henry, perhaps you can opine on that, but it does not, because these are grant funded items.
Right, no, that was one of the goals the mayor had, to find funding for the schools that would not increase our minimum budget requirement. We were looking for one-time expenses that qualified under the ARPA requirements. So this just helps Lunda and the Board of Ed team to narrow the gap between what they asked, requested, and the funding that they get for this coming fiscal year 24.
Councilmember Diana Revelous.
I just want to say before I ask this question, I do appreciate what the school system is doing for our students, and I understand the the care being taken to try to facilitate, especially in a financial way, what's needed. But my question is this, truly on the aspect of the fact that, what was requested was pretty high, and it was also came to a space where we were here maybe about 2-3 years ago with services that we were at once we asked not to put funding towards that were done. And then two were supposed to be one-time funds that then got allocated into the ask of operating NPS. So that being said, and then this would also deplete the rest of the ARPA funding. So that being said, and particularly with Mr. Dakowitz's professional expertise listening, is there any other way to pay for this? A. B. I'm just kind of concerned about hearing one-time expenses that may not truly stay one time because we've been here very recently. So so if the two of you can kind of help me, not in the fact of because I want to support our school systems, but it's just in how we're allocating certain funds and how we're supporting this. I'm just trying to say this in a correct way.
You're doing very well, Diana.
Thank you. I just want to see that this is where, if this is really truly a space where the ARPA funds should end, or we can give these to our children in other manners and find funding for the needs of NPS in other manners, or B, can we truly be assured that you're saying as a one-time expense, we won't hear this again in the next budget season?
I can speak from my understanding of how these particular funds will be managed, and Henry, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The account number that's referenced with these dollars is an account that will be managed by the city, if I'm correct. And therefore, the city will be responsible for these funds, for the items that are listed, and only those items that are listed. And the city will be responsible for the disbursement of this $2.5 million. So this is Henry entirely controls this pot of money.
Yes, I don't need to correct you, Linda, at all. I will point out, as was discussed, there was a back and forth in several versions of this list. Where we raised the issue that you did, Diana, about one-time expenses versus some that might be ongoing. And the Board of Ed went back, looked at all their items, looked at their budget, and we are satisfied that this list, which has been submitted for approval tonight and then to the council, are one-time expenses for this upcoming year's budget. The management of such, Linda, you'll put in invoices and say it can come out of this account, so you can watch that. The reality is money is fungible. The dollars can be used anywhere, but the mayor was very specific and said we must have one-time expenses. And the Board of Ed, led by Linda on the financial side, came up with a list that we were satisfied were one-time expenses. So we had that problem during the budget discussions, and this was a way to give them money one time to help them, just like we've been using other ARPA money to help other projects. And we are satisfied that these are one-time items.
Okay, I appreciate that answer.
You're welcome.
From both.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments related to this resolution? I would just comment that if there happens to be a need for these one-time expenses to be continued beyond the ARPA grant that we're utilizing, I'm sure the Board of Education will review those items very closely and see how they could be funded beyond the grant within their allocated budget amount.
Right.
Just for that comment, I just want to express that I'm going to be doing an extension. I don't think that I'm with you guys in doing this, but just for the possibility of that look can happen, and for past of what has happened, I just want to explain my abstention, but I'm not like against it. I just, for what you just said, hopefully if this does rear that anything is needed again, it's allocated in a way that NPS can sustain. So I just want to clarify that. I just want to clarify that.
Diana, let me address that. The real issue with recurring expenses versus one-time are personnel costs.
Yes.
Okay? Robert just talked about getting an arborist horticulturalist on staff. The way we have maintained ARPA money being used when hiring people is that people hired with ARPA money come on as grant employees, which we use on a regular basis, where they know and acknowledge when the funding
It's
ends.
complete, the
That's
position.
it. You don't
Yeah.
have employment. As Robert said, he would hope that the people we bring on board can be hired full-time. And that's a discussion probably we'll have in 2 years when the funding ends. Okay, so the key with the Board of Ed is we wanted to make sure that people weren't hired where they might have an expectation of continued employment when the funding was only supposed to be for 1 year. So Lunda gets it, Lunda specified items. Now, when we say one time, these are expenses that Lunda and the Board of Ed may have every year, but we're funding 1 year's worth. And then what they need going forward would be requested in their operating budget. But it's not with a problem where we make an action hiring someone and then we have a problem down the road of not having the funds going forward. Okay, is that clarified?
It does. It does. It does. It's just like you just said. And I get it. Trust me, I get it. It's just like you said, we would be paying for it now. And then next year, if they need it again, it's going to go into operating budget. So it's going to need funding again.
But just remember, the city funds the Board of Ed with a total top line number, 225 million.
Yes, sir.
We are not allowed to tell them how to spend that money.
Exactly.
They are left to their own devices to spend it.
Exactly.
Next year, when they get their allocation, they have other funding sources as well. They have grants. They can allocate it any way they want. We just wanted to make sure that no commitments were made with this 2.5 million that would cause a conflict down the road, and we feel satisfied.
Right. Right. I'm with you. I understand.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this resolution show by a raise of hand or verbal confirmation. All those opposed have the same right. Any abstentions? Let's see. So we have 3 in favor, Councilmember Burnett, Kides, and Najelski Eichner. No opposed. And Diana, you were abstaining?
I still am, yeah.
Yes, so 1 abstention, Councilmember Diana Revelous. So the resolution passed, and we will move it forward to the full Common Council on Tuesday, May 23rd for full council approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that,
motion to adjourn.
thank you. All those in favor, show by the sign of raising your hand or verbal aye. It's unanimous. We are adjourned at 9:15 p.m. Thank you. We had a long meeting, several items to cover, but all good work. Have a great rest of your evening and thank you.
Thank you. Have a great
Good night.
evening.